Campaigners are urging a rethink of the widely used reluctant feeder policy in some NHS trusts, not all, which instructs maternity staff not to intervene or offer a bottle of formula if a newborn doesn't feed for up to 48 hours. Campaigners say there's an outdated obsession with breastfeeding in maternity units. So, Nadia, do you think it's time we refocus? 48 hours?
Well, you know,
feels like a long time.
My friend Rachel, my homeopath, she did exactly that with her son. She had a difficult birth and she waited 48 hours. He was screaming, but then he latched on and he ate really well. I mean, they wouldn't be saying that if it was dangerous to a baby.
No.
So, obviously, medically, it's safe to do it. I think any woman should do what feels right for them. But what I would say is, I feel really lucky, though I resented it at the time, that my sister was the one that put all the pressure on me when I was going to give up, because I found it really, really hard. It's really, really difficult. And I really wanted to breastfeed my children because there's no doubt about it. The breast milk is better for babies. And so she pushed me at a point that I was ready to give up. I did give up for a bit, then I went back to it. And I'm really glad that I did. But I do think it's wrong. We carry so much guilt as parents. In those first few days when you're a mum, is finding the balance between where are you supporting the woman.
Breast is best, for those women who either can or choose not to or whatever, that statement in itself,
but it should be breast is best, but if you can't manage it, then there's understanding.
Still, does that make you feel kind of second-rate? I don't know.
I mean, I just think, you know, I'm no earth mother, as we all know, but I just think if you find breastfeeding easy and that's what you want to do, great. But if you don't, equally, as you said, there should be the support there for you. And I do worry. You say, you know, that obviously it's not harmful to baby, the 48 hours, but what about the mum? It would be incredibly stressful to go for 48 hours without anybody intervening to help if you're struggling.
And if your baby's screaming for 40
hours.
Well, I can't imagine they're just, you know, let them cry, but you will be... I mean, funny enough, it did happen with Bonnie. With Charlie, she breastfed quite enthusiastically. Bonnie was a lazy little devil. That's what you say now, don't you? But at the time, it didn't feel like that. She just wasn't feeding. And between us, we just weren't managing it. And she actually had to go back into hospital because she wasn't putting on weight.
Well, sometimes babies are really sleepy when they're first born, and they haven't got the energy.
I mean, I can say that now, looking back, 14 years on. At the time,
it's devastating.
It was hell. I mean, it really... You felt like you were starving your baby. I mean, it was just awful.
Well, that's exactly how I felt, because I had Lauren 38 years ago. And 38 years ago, you were in hospital for 7 to 10 days. 10 days in cesarean.
Can you imagine?
And 7 days when you had a baby. So you felt safe there. And I tried my hardest to feed Lauren, but I found it the most painful thing in the world, honestly. I had cracked nipples, I was putting cabbage leaves on there, I was doing everything. I was sitting crying, dreading feeding her.
Did they help you, though?
They did try their hardest to help me. But it just wasn't for me. And I felt really bad, and I thought, I'm not a good mother, you know, I can't breastfeed my child and everything. But then Lauren had Lila and Betsy, and she was struggling breastfeeding, and the midwife came to her house and just showed her to hold the baby in a different position, like under her arm, and latch onto her breast like that, and she found that much easier.
I think that's a really important point, though, because, like, if somebody's watching now and they're really struggling with it, it was the lowest point after having my baby's breastfeeding, because it isn't just a case of, and they latch on. And the thing is, if you get support, like lots of women, it can be a simple thing like that of just changing position. And so... Is that pressure, or is that a woman being helped to...
I mean, the health authorities are in a difficult
aren't we, really?
Yeah, you're doing your best. And just to say, and it's important, obviously, because, as you say, Nadia, if there's people sitting out there in that situation and struggling, I mean, when we're talking about after 24 hours if the baby hasn't breastfed, you know, reassure the mother, continue to hand express 2 to 3 hours every 2 to 3 hours, and that continues even if the baby is a so-called reluctant feeder.
I think where people are in and out now, they don't get a chance for the nurses to help them.
It really
They're in for like 12 hours sometimes, or 24 hours, and then they're sent home.
So I don't know where this pressure is coming from, because it seems to be you have to get home as fast as you can.
Breastfeeding was more painful than the actual childbirth itself, because you have the baby, but with the breastfeeding, you have every time you put it up. Anyway.
And, Jane, I mean, did you feel that pressure or not?
Well, when I had Ellie, so that was what, how old is she now? 28, that was 28 years ago. I remember somebody came up to me in the ward and said, you know, the whole breast is best thing. And I did try it, a bit like you, Linda. And I went home and I kept saying it's so painful. And then you had the health visitor come round and she was helping me. And Ellie was just crying, couldn't get enough milk. So after about a couple of weeks, I gave up. I gave up and gave her and it was such a relief because the formula filled her up. And when it came to Grace, I have to say, I was in hospital and I remember sort of seeing out the corner of my eye the breastfeeding advocate or whatever they're called coming, and I just went, no, not for me, not doing it.
But, you know, I think it's really important to say that if you struggle with it and you do really want to do it, there is a way to get support. Yeah. And when it clicks, if you're desperate to do it, it's the most amazing feeling. And I need to apologise because that was my phone, which was very unprofessional if you heard
No, that's quite all right. I wonder what it was. Well, I mean, it is a long time ago, but I would like to say, although we had a really difficult time for us, the support that we got from the Queen Mums in Glasgow was phenomenal. There's a lady called Rosemary. I'll always be grateful to Rosemary. She had Bonnie draped over my shoulder. She had her on a rubber ring round here. I mean, God knows she should have turned out to be a gymnast. But she was a wonderful, wonderful person, and she was just such a huge support. So everyone's trying to do their best.
Don't be embarrassed to reach out and just ask
and
for
don't
help.
feel like a failure if you can't
and if
do
you
it.
don't, if it doesn't work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a poll, and the results of the poll are that those of you who think that breastfeeding should... Well, I'm waiting for somebody to breastfeed this into my ear.
Come on, squirt it.
Come on, work it. Come on, breastfeed it into my ear. 35% said yes, yes, and what was the question? There we go. 35% of people felt they did feel guilty for giving up breastfeeding, and of course that means how many didn't, Linda?
65%.
Yay! That was seamless. I think we got away with that. I mean, unfortunately, your telephone got off in the middle, kind of spoiled it. But
Very unprofessional. Very unprofessional.
It was perfect.
Never done that before.